It's a great day at the Academy of Scholars. Welcome to another episode of Scholarly Speaking Live with Dr. Stacy Lambert-Johnson, the Director of Student Success at the Academy of Scholars. I am Benny Crane Jr., the Assistant Director of Student Success. Today's topic will discuss how to deal with tantrums, whining, and backtalk.
Thank you for joining us for today's live session. No matter where you're joining us from, whether you're at work or at home, we pray that you're having a great AOS day and hope that you can visit us here on campus someday soon. So last week we talked about how to help your child resolve conflict. This week we're exploring how to deal with tantrums, backtalk, and whining. But before we get started, Benny, where can our viewers watch today's live session once it's over?
Everything from this show will end up on our website, academyofscholars.com, including both the audio and video versions. Now, if you prefer watching us each week, you can find the video version on our Facebook page, YouTube channel, LinkedIn, and Instagram. If you're looking for something entertaining to listen to on your drive to work, you can download the audio version anywhere you download your favorite podcast. Now, shout out to all the people who are joining us live today and those of you who follow us on our social media platforms. We appreciate you joining us. Now, just do us a favor. Tell your friends we're on. All you have to do is hit that share button right there. Comment and tell us about how your child deals with their frustration. Are they tantrum throwers, whiners, or back talkers? How do you handle it when they do these things? Are you calm and cool and nurturing, or do you blow up and have a fit? Tell us. We want to know.
We want to know. Now, as parents, one of the biggest discipline issues we have to handle is how to deal with a child who's talking back, whining, and throwing tantrums.
Yes.
I remember the first time one of my children threw a tantrum. It was my daughter.
Okay.
And she was getting ready to get her hair braided. She hated it so much that whenever it was time to get her hair braided, she would fall out into a full-on tantrum, kicking, screaming, and crying before I even touched her head.
Wow.
I mean, really crazy. No, Jesus, please, why?
Oh, she was calling on the Lord.
Yes, my neighbors thought that I was torturing her. So to avoid getting the police called on me, I would sit outside on the front porch and comb her hair in public for all the neighbors to see that I wasn't killing her. She was just being dramatic.
That's funny. And what's even funnier is people trying to act like children doing these things is some kind of new phenomenon.
It's not new?
No, newsflash, children did not just start having tantrums, whining, and back talking when we started having children. They always have. And parents, don't worry. This doesn't happen because of some kind of parental deficiency that you have, no matter what the people without kids tell you. Now, I remember before I had kids, seeing kids having tantrums and such with parents and thinking to myself, when I have kids, I wish my kids would act that way and see what happens. And guess what happened?
What happened?
My wish came true.
Now, Betty, listen, I don't think that I backtalk or whined or threw tantrums with my mom. It was just a different time. All she had to do was look at me and I would get it together.
So why did she have to look at you then?
Because, we go into the store, I'd see something that I want, I'd be like, I want, and she would just be like, give me that death stare, and I would just get it together.
That was probably the back talking happening.
Oh, okay, I guess. So back talk can happen at almost any age, starting almost as early as when kids master their first no. It's a normal part of child development, but that doesn't make it any easier to deal with as a parent or in a school setting. Talking back can be triggered by a variety of causes. It can stem from a child trying to exert control over his or her own life, such as what he wants to wear, what he wants to eat, or what activity he wants to do. It could be a child's way of testing boundaries like we talked about before, or it could simply be grouchiness from being hungry or tired, which can then turn into whining and tantrum throwing.
Stacy, I read a study that would contend 2- and 3-year-olds argue with parents 20 to 25 times per day. And it typically happens on cue, like at nap time, meal times, getting dropped off at daycare, and at places like the store or mall where they're overwhelmed by people, sights, and sounds, or places like the doctor's office when they're afraid to get a shot.
Or getting their hair braided. Again, this is a normal part of growing up, but it's still difficult to deal with. So today we're giving advice on how to deal with tantrums, backtalk, and whining.
And here's the reality. Sometimes, a lot of times, parents incite tantrums, whining, and backtalk by trying to force our will on our children. Don't get caught up in the I'm in charge, so thou shalt do what I tell thine to do It doesn't work. So today we'll talk about practical things you can do that will speak more towards what you can do as parents to prevent tantrums, backtalk, and whining.
The first step in handling tantrums, backtalk, and whining is picking specific behaviors to target. Think about what causes the target behaviors. These causes are called triggers or antecedents. Often antecedents are things that parents themselves do, like Benny said, and don't even know they're doing. For example, you might notice that your child tends to have a tantrum and whines or wants to talk back when you ask them to switch activities. Or you might see that your child doesn't follow instructions if it's something they don't want to do. The goal is to help children improve their behavior by using more helpful antecedents, not ones that trigger negative behaviors.
Think about it this way. If your wife goes off every time you leave the toilet seat up, at some point you've got to start putting that thing down for your own sanity's sake.
That's
or
true.
If your husband seems to always be in a better mood when you cook him a nice dinner, cook that favorite meal of his before you tell him how much you planned on spending at the mall this weekend. And the same goes for your kids. It's a great idea to start paying close attention to what may be triggers for your child's behavior.
To understand and respond effectively to the problematic behavior, I like to use the ABCs of behavior management.
And this is similar to the approach teachers are asked to take when they see problematic behavior from scholars. And we promise this management strategy will be as effective as the work you put into it.
So A, antecedents, we've already discussed. Preceding factors that make a behavior more or less likely to occur. The more familiar term for this, as mentioned earlier, is triggers. Learning and anticipating triggers is an extremely helpful tool in preventing misbehavior. Some common antecedents parents should avoid are assuming expectations are understood, calling things out from a distance, and transitions without warning. To avoid these triggers, make sure your expectations are clearly stated and understood. Ask your child to repeat the expectation. Avoid calling instructions out from a distance. Instead, make sure your child is facing you and you have eye contact. Make sure that they have your undivided attention and you have theirs. And be sure to give a heads up when a transition is about to happen. For example, if playtime is over, don't announce it when it's actually over. Use a timer and let your child know that when the timer goes off, it's time to clean up. Getting children ready for a transition will lessen the shock of having to immediately stop an activity they're enjoying and help with a smooth transition, stopping the trigger and the unwanted whining, tantrum, or backtalk.
And all this takes is being a little more intentional. Maybe you can set an alarm on your watch for 5 or 10 minutes before it's time to go. But you can save yourself a lot of heartache and consternation by doing this.
So true. Okay, A was antecedent or triggers. B is for behaviors. Behaviors are the specific actions you're trying to encourage or discourage. The first step in a good behavior management plan is to identify target behaviors. These behaviors should be specific so everyone is clear on what is expected. An example of a poorly defined behavior is acting up or being good. A well-defined behavior would be running around the room, which is bad, or starting homework on time, which is good. Identify the specific behavior you want to target.
Just this morning, Stacy, I had to put this into practice. My son walked in from basketball practice last night exhausted and just fell out on the sofa. And rightfully so. It was late and he worked hard. He just kicked off his shoes and laid there for a while. Now, when I woke up this morning, his shoes were still in the middle of the floor, and this annoys me so bad. I had to bite back the feeling of saying, "Don't be leaving your shoes in the middle of the floor, boy." Instead, I stayed calm and I said, "Son, you worked hard yesterday in practice and you should be proud of yourself for that kind of effort. So I totally understand you're walking in and kicking your shoes off. Remember, before you leave the room, the expectation is for you to take your shoes with you." I was so proud of myself.
I'm so proud of you, Benny. Wow.
Now, I would likely have to remind him again because he's 10 and children need constant reminders, but at least I named the behavior that's expected and I spoke positively instead of negatively.
See, these scholarly speakings are paying off.
Yes.
Last but certainly not least, C, consequences. Consequences are the results that naturally or logically follow a behavior. Consequences, either negative or positive, affect the likelihood of a behavior recurring. And the more immediate the consequence, the more powerful it is. Yes. Not all consequences are created equal, however. Some are an excellent way to create structure and help kids understand the difference between acceptable behaviors and unacceptable behaviors, while others have the potential to do more harm than good. As a parent, having a strong understanding of how to consistently provide consequences can make the difference in effectively managing your child's behavior, helping with tantrum throwing, backtalk, and whining.
Stacy, some parents' consequences for children's negative behaviors is effectively having a tantrum in response. Ooh. Responding to a tantrum, whining, and back-talking by raising your voice and threatening to whoop them is not a good example to your child on how you want them to behave when faced with disappointment. Now, as Stacy always says,
children don't do what we say. They do what we do.
Yes. So, if you make a habit of responding to their negative behavior appropriately, eventually, maybe not right away, but eventually, they will begin responding the right way.
Also, parents, avoid giving negative attention, delayed consequences, and disproportionate consequences. Embrace positive attention for positive behaviors, ignoring actively, and most importantly, being consistent.
Yes, and this requires you being engaged. Put the phone down. It's hard parenting. It's equally the most rewarding and most difficult experience of my life. And for us to follow Stacy's advice, we have to stop what we're doing and give our children our full attention.
Additionally, parents, when you see the ABCs working, think of rewards. It's a tangible way to give children positive feedback for desired behaviors. As we have discussed in previous SSLs, rewards are most effective as motivators when the child can choose from a variety of things. Extra time on the iPad, a special treat, etc. Something that the child values. Rewards should be linked to specific behaviors and always delivered consistently and on time.
Yes, and I'll just add that rewards should be as consistent as consequences. You have to be as aware of the positive and desired behaviors as you are of the negative ones.
Finally, parents, as frustrating and upsetting as backtalk, tantrums, and whining may be, keep in mind that your positive responses will keep this behavior in check. Know, too, that countless other parents are going through the same thing.
Yes.
Most importantly, remind yourself that the calmer you are and the less you let yourself be affected by sassy backtalk, falling out on the floor, and whining to get their way, the more your child will learn to use positive ways to express his or her own opinions. Well, what do you think? How do you deal with tantrums, backtalk, and whining? Have you used the ABCs of behavior management? Did you learn something new from today's episode? Comment and let us know your thoughts on today's topic.
Now, if you're looking for more information to help you deal with your child's tantrums, whining, and backtalk, go to our website at academyofscholars.com/scholarly speaking resources. In the meantime, we suggest you check out the book, The Explosive Child by Ross Greene. Now, this book is for parents who are out there saying, Benny Crane, I've tried all that stuff y'all just talked about, and it just isn't working for me. So, if your child has frequent severe outbursts that are leaving you feeling frustrated, scared, and worried, and desperate for help, the Explosive Child's collaborative problem-solving model can help you work with your child to solve the problems that precipitate explosive episodes and teach them the skills they need. And remember, no matter where you live in the world, you can give your child access to an exceptional Christian affordable education with the Academy of Scholars Premier Online Learning. Not only does the Academy of Scholars give your child the opportunity to engage in school at their own pace, but we also provide a comprehensive curriculum with classes like coding and computer science that will have your child excited about school each day. The Academy of Scholars Premier Online Learning. It's the online school you've been looking for.
Well, I hope you enjoyed today's live session. To learn more about our amazing school, the Academy of Scholars, please go to our website at academyofscholars.com. Join us next week as we continue our live discussions. Next week, we'll be talking about building your child's self-esteem.
Yes.
Until next time, I am Dr. Stacy Lambert-Johnson.
And I'm Benny Crane Jr.
Saying goodbye and be blessed.
The Academy of Scholars. Exceptional, Christian, affordable.